Welcome to Funnel Hacker Radio Podcast, where we go behind the scenes and uncover the tactics and strategies top entrepreneurs are using to make more sales, dominate their markets, and how you can get those same results. Here's your host, Dave Woodward.
Hey everybody, welcome to Funnel Hacker Radio. I'm super excited today. I've got the email alchemist on the call, Daniel Levis. Daniel, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
I have no idea what email alchemy is, and so I'm really super excited. Actually, I know what email is. I'm real familiar with that, and obviously at ClickFunnels we use email extensively. We've built the ActionEdX platform for that whole reason. But I'm really super excited to be working with you on this project because I have heard so many awesome, amazing things about you and your content, the messages that you convey, the people you've worked with, Jay Abraham, John Benson, Annie Jenkins, know all these guys real well, and say just awesome, awesome things about what you've been able to do. And I was looking through some of the, the show notes and stuff beforehand, and you've got this crazy record of being able to pull in, $3, $5, even as much as, $16 per subscriber in the crazy couple weeks. And I'm just dying to find out more about how you're doing this. A lot of our users are using email as a primary part of their business. And I know the content today is going to be super, super awesome and most specifically pertain directly to what they're doing in their business. So let's dive right in if you're okay with that.
Yeah, sounds good. So you want to know why it's called email alchemy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, alchemy means these kind of weird scientists of old, magicians, sorcerers and wizards and so forth. They were looking for a way to turn rocks and, dirt and stones into gold. And that's kind of the analogy for email alchemy, that most people have lists that they're sitting on that are kind of like the dirt and the gravel and the stones. And email alchemy allows them to dig much deeper into the list and turn that basic, dross into gold.
I love that. Dross into gold. That's a great visual.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. There's an old story of this guy named Russell Cromwell used to tell about this African farmer who had a farm, and he heard about gold, and he left the farm and he traveled all over I think it was diamonds, maybe not gold, it was diamonds. And he's traveling all over the world. He's looking for diamonds and can't find any diamonds, and he's burning his life up, and he eventually commits suicide. He jumps into a river, and the person who ended up with his farm found diamonds on the farm. So that's another sort of metaphor that I use in my marketing, that a lot of people go, chasing diamonds in social media and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and video production and everything else, when the diamonds are really in the list.
Oh, that's cool. Well, you've got this crazy acronym, SODPC. What the heck does SODPC mean, and how does that actually pertain to email?
Well, SODPC is kind of a formula for putting together an email alchemy email. And there are a few things, like if you ever get my emails, you notice they look very, very different. They're unusual. And let's start with the way most people use email. Most people use email as kind of like a simple notification service, right? I got this cool thing, and they write a couple of paragraphs and go check out the video. That's kind of the de facto standard, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, email alchemy, it takes a completely different approach. The emails tend to be longer, and SODPC is kind of like the 5 parts of an email alchemy email. And the reason that the emails are longer is because we want to pre-frame the click. We don't want people clicking through blind curiosity just to see what's on the landing page. And that's kind of what people do with email. They write, short sort of blind subject line and blind copy. It's got benefits, but it's just, you don't know what it is. So you get people clicking on the links, but when they land, they don't convert very well. So the idea here is, yeah, we're going to use curiosity and open loops, but we're using them to get people to really read the email. And then the email, we use several techniques, and we can get into the SODPC formula to pre-frame and pre-condition that person for action so that when they land on the landing page, they're ready to do business. So the first letter of the SODPC formula, and it has nothing to do with turf or twits or computers that don't operate properly. S stands for subject line. And I'm not a big believer in kind of the common theory of subject lines, which is, hey, ... or, just the person's name. Have you seen this yet, Dave? That kind of stuff. I mean, once in a while, that's good. But to do that all the time, you're really looking at the wrong thing. I like to say that you should really not look at your open rates or your click-through rates as a general rule, as a day-to-day sort of thing when you're mailing, because those things, when you use those as your KPI, when you use open rate as a KPI or click-through rate as a KPI, you're really shooting yourself in the foot because you're doing things that are going to actually reduce the conversion on the landing page. And you're doing things that are going to limit the frequency of your mailings. And we'll get into that a little later on, but let me tell you about the S part of the SODPC formula. When you want to create an email that gets people to open, gets people to consume, and also keeps people consuming emails over the long haul, not burning out your list, in other words, you want to kind of get three ideas going there. Number one, you do want to have a pattern interrupt. And a pattern interrupt is kind of like, think of it as, what gets our attention below the level of conscious awareness. And it's things like sex, survival, intrigue, controversy, conspiracy, paradox, two things that shouldn't go together. Anything that's bizarre or unusual, embarrassment, betrayal, depravity, tabloid-worthy stuff, right?
Love it.
Something in there, even if it's just one word. Second thing you need in that subject line most of the time is some level of curiosity and, a need to know what's inside the email. And the third part that a lot of people tend to leave out because they're focusing on just getting an email opened is a relevant benefit. Now, I don't like the idea of somebody opening an email because it says, hey, ... because they have no clue.
Right.
I like to give them some type of a reason or a benefit that's in the headline. So I'll give you a few examples. Here's some examples of headlines that kind of have these three things going on. Tricky marketing problem in parentheses. Why you shouldn't use social media. Now, you see how it's got that pattern interrupt, why you shouldn't use social media, assuming you're selling something to do with social media. It's got a benefit, right? Tricky marketing problem. Well, why would you tell me about the problem if you didn't have a solution, right? Sure. So it's got those elements. Another example might be science of found money in your brain. It's kind of like a paradox. How can there be money in your brain? Another one is like German statesman teaches muscle growth. Something unusual. You wouldn't expect it. And if you're in that niche, if you're a target for that muscle growth niche, you want to learn muscle growth, right?
Oh, I love it. Again, curiosity has been one of the main things we've always taken a look at. And it's been a huge deal in our subject lines, headlines for landing pages. I'm a huge believer in that.
Yeah, but it's also more than curiosity. You need that pattern interrupt as well because, when people are in their inbox, they're not looking at the subject line very carefully. What are they looking at? They're looking at the from line, right?
Oh, sure.
They're looking at that from line because the from line's more important than the subject line. And they're thinking, well, what was the last thing Russell sent me? Was it any good? And if it wasn't, they're not even going to look at the subject line. So the idea of the pattern interrupt is it's something that it's usually just one word even, that's just so unusual that it grabs the eye before you're even aware that, hey, let me look at the subject line. And again, it's not just about getting the email opened, not just about getting the email opened. It's about giving the person something that they're going to grab onto when they do open. It's not just about, oh, that's what it's about, and then they shut it off.
I love that idea. That relevant benefit's super, super critical.
Yeah, and it's the toughest thing, because that's the thing that tips the person off. Oh, it's a commercial email. So it's a bit of an art. Now let's get on to the second one. SODPC. O is for opening, and we all know we got to hook that reader, right? And the way you hook a reader, you use short, incomplete sentences, right? Because the eye, when it looks at something, if it sees a big long sentence, it's got to actually work to get that meaning. But if you got a short little sentence like, the legend started years ago, ... I mean, you can't look at that without reading. And you want to know, what's the legend? And that sucks you into the second one. So we're talking about open loops again, curiosity. You're raising a question, and then you're dancing around the question a little bit before you answer it. So if I want to open up in the body of the email, say I'm selling some kind of social media consultant thing, and somebody just opted in for my free report, and they get this email with the subject line that sets the hook, tricky marketing problem in parenthesis, why you shouldn't use social media. Well, then I expand on that hook in the opening segment of the email, and I might do it something like this. Although I'm grateful that you downloaded our free 7 social media marketing secrets to double your business this year report, I forgot to warn you about a major social media glitch that's built into our comprehensive program. And now I've immediately hooked them, right? I mean, I've expanded on that pattern interrupt that I used in the subject line. People don't expect you to tell them about a glitch if they're trying to sell you something, do they?
No, of course not.
And I'm also opening up the loop. What's the glitch? Got to read on to find out. And then I tease them a little bit more by writing something like, I talk about what the glitch is not, right? And I'm not talking about the usual problems that come standard from the typical run-of-the-mill social media consultant or agency that talks a good game but leaves you with no hard dollar return on your investment. They'll bury you in expenses for useless, maybe even fake fans, friends, and likes, stick you with hidden fees, maybe even ruin your brand with low-value, thoroughly unresearched posts written in broken English. I'm not talking about spam complaints, getting kicked off the major social media networks, or being blacklisted by Google. No, I'm talking about something we can't help you with. I still haven't told them what the heck it is. You see how that lures them in?
Sure.
Also differentiates you too, right? It's like a competitive differentiation. So that's the opening segment. That's what it's all about. It's about getting people engaged and reading. And the human attention is like a locomotive. Very difficult to get it going. But once you get it going, there's a certain momentum that builds up, and that's how you do it.
How long does your opening usually last? Is it like 3-4 lines, sentences type of deal? Is it a couple paragraphs?
Yeah, short. I mean, it's email, right?
Yeah.
A long email is typical email alchemy emails are like 600 to 800 words, sometimes 1,000. Still a pretty short piece of communication, long by email standards, but you got to keep moving. We're not writing a novel or anything.
That sounds great. So what's the D as far as deepening? How does that work?
Deepening, yeah. The idea with the deepening is to get the reader to withdraw from the sensory world, right? We want them to forget that they're sitting there at their computer or with their iPod or iPhone or whatever it is. We want to move them outside of the here and the now. take them somewhere into the past or into the future, so that we can activate their imagination. Because when you get somebody inside of their own head, making mental pictures, they become more suggestible, they become more open-minded. And that's what you want when you want to sell something. You want to introduce a new idea and you want them to accept the idea. So it's typically some sort of story. Because a story, by definition, it takes that person out of the here and now, because you're telling them about something that happened in some other place at some other time, right? You can do sci-fi too. You can say, trigger words like imagine, picture yourself. That's science fiction, right? Now we're taking that person into the future. Look, it could be the past, but the beauty of that is now you can just make up the story if you have to, because it's, imagine, picture yourself. You've got license now to make up a story. So let me give you an example. Imagine you're dreaming about standing on the edge, ... of a shark-infested pool. And for some crazy dream reason, you're poised to jump. But it's 3 a.m. and you can't wake up. You're sweating, thrashing. The sheets are soaked and twisted. You see black fins circling, cutting through the mist over the pool. Water is lapping at your toes. You're starting to lean forward. No! Your arms are flailing. Stop! Don't do it, you idiot! Wake up! But you can't stop and you can't wake up. A puppet master's operating your legs. Now your body's in the air. You hear a splash. Yikes! Turn on the light! And pant, take a breath. It was only a dream. Yet what you've just experienced is like the waking nightmare of supposedly making your business easier on the internet. Because being online is supposed to be more like floating on a raft on a hot summer day than like swimming with the sharks when you've nicked yourself shaving. So you see how you can't listen to that without your imagination, the wheels in your brain starting to spin, right?
No, you're very good. You're very good.
And the idea is there's a moral to that story, right? There's a moral to the story that serves your purposes in selling that thing that you want to sell, because naturally you want to make, you're selling internet marketing stuff. You want to sell ClickFunnels, whatever it is. You want to get the idea that, it's without ClickFunnels, it's like jumping into a shark-infested pool. With ClickFunnels, it's like floating down the stream on a raft on a hot summer day. So there's kind of like this implicit under the radar buying conclusion that's in the deepening segment of the email. So it's typically a story, or it's this imagine, picture yourself, and people love that kind of stuff. Like they almost like reading the emails as much as they do, watching a video or buying something that they really want. And that's really, really important, because if you don't give people a reward for just reading your emails, maybe they're not in a position to buy today, which is, more common than if they are, right? Your conversion, if you get 5% conversion, you're a rock star, but you don't want to alienate people. You want to keep that 95% happy and engaged and enjoying your emails, but without necessarily giving away the secrets, right? Now, if you tell a story and you put a smile on somebody's face, or you teach them some kind of like high-level wisdom, or give them inspiration or encouragement, they appreciate that. But you're not giving them like, do this, do that, do this in your emails. Because number one, that is kind of boring anyway. And number two, you're kind of taking the wind out of your sails when they do go to your landing page and they watch your video and you want them to buy those secrets, right?
I think it's great. So now I want them to buy. How do I get to the P for the pitch?
Well, the P, if you study storytelling, one of the things they tell you is that you never, ever reveal subtext. You tell a story, and you've got a message, you've got a meaning, and you never come out at the end and say, "So you read the story, and and it means this." But in the case of writing an email, we do that, and the pitch is where you come out and you spell out the meaning of the story that you just told them in the deepening. And pitch is not a dirty word at all. It's very important that you be very direct at some point. So far, we've been pretty indirect, but we want to get very direct. We want to tell them, well, this was the meaning of the story, not in those exact words, but we want to bring the subtext of that deepening phase into the person's conscious awareness. We want to spell it out for them, spell out the moral of the story that's buried under the surface, and then that you've been telling them there. And then what that does is you're absolutely sure that they know what they're supposed to be doing from this point forward. And they tend to accept it much more because their subconscious mind has already made the connection without them really realizing it.
Got it.
And the other thing that I like to do, which is extremely unusual, not done very much, I like to mix what I call content. And again, it's not hard teaching, but it's stuff that people perceive as being content. And I like mixing it together with the pitch. So I don't like sending a lot of people have this kind of division in their mind where they say, okay, we're sending 3 content emails so that we earn the right to send an offer. You've heard that before, right?
Of course.
I don't believe in that. I believe that every email should bring value, and every email should have an outlet where people can go and they can take action, buy something or opt in or book a consultation or whatever your sales objective happens to be. But they enjoy reading the emails, even if they may not be in a position to take action.
So now that you've kind of wove that through, how open then is your call to action?
My call to action, when you say open, you mean
direct? Are you just right in their face with it? How do you? So we've gone through the subject line. We've got a ton of curiosity. We've got a pattern interrupt. We've gone through the whole thing as far as making sure we've got a relevant benefit. All that's been in the subject line. We've got the opening. We've engaged them through that. Tons of open looks and hooks and everything else. The deepening I thought was fantastic. Love how you basically went into that part as far as really the story aspect of it and then weaving the pitch into it. So when it comes to the call to action, is it just a link, or are you creating? How do you tie the call to action into your email?
Well, number one, it has to be super clear, has to be super concise. I like to use hypertext to link. I don't like just putting a raw link in there. And I'm kind of strategic about what the call to action is. It might be go and watch the webinar replay, pay a particular attention to 30 minutes and 24 seconds in, because that's where you're going to learn that. And then in another email later on in the sequence, I might be much more focused on, now's the time to invest. So it's kind of like a strategic thought process. Is what do you really? How are you going to position it? How deep into the landing page are you going to go? And I always like to have I like to make campaigns that have deadlines on them. So I'm gradually getting more and more serious with each email that I'm sending. So the scarcity and urgency and more direct invest call to actions versus check out type call to actions. And I like to always, not always, but very often use an embedded command. Like when I might say, the real nightmare would be missing out on this podcast, or to not get Daniel's free special report called 147 opening line idea starters for email marketing on fire. And you see how I marked that out in my speech? Get Daniel's free special report.
That's great.
Well, that's an embedded command. And that's exactly how you want to do your calls to action in an email. Hyperlink the part of the sentence that is the command, right? That's more powerful than just putting the whole command as a sentence and as a hyperlink. because it's kind of indirect, right? You've got a train of thought going, and you're just kind of marking out the command. So it's a little more subtle.
So for those people, again, are a little more visual on that aspect. So when you're saying hyperlink just the get portion, or hyperlink the whole, help people understand visually what you're really talking about. What's actually going to be hyperlinked in that sentence?
In that sentence, I would hyperlink get Daniel's free special report. And then I named the report. It's called 147 Opening Line Idea Starters for Email Marketing on Fire. I wouldn't link that, because here's what happens when you put these kind of like links that are going on forever. Yeah, people see them, but they're blind to them. They don't read them. But if you put get Daniel's free special report, you can't look at the link without reading it. It's too short.
Got it. So that's the part, get Daniel's free report, that actually gets hyperlinked.
Yeah.
Not the name, I just want to make sure for those people who are listening, they understand exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and you'll notice that wasn't the beginning of the sentence. The beginning of the sentence is the real nightmare would be missing out on this podcast, or to not get Daniel's free special report. You see, the subconscious mind doesn't really register negatives, right? So I'm saying, or to not get Daniel's free special report. We don't like, this happens to me all the time. I'll be reading something and I'll miss the word not. Or I'll miss
I've done that too.
Don't. It's like when you tell your kid, don't play by the railroad tracks. What's the first thing that you see them doing?
Playing by the railroad.
Playing by the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I remember that as far as a lot of coaching things when we were coaching our kids when they were younger, as far as, don't miss the ball, don't miss the ball, don't miss the ball. And all they did is miss the ball, miss the ball, miss the ball. So I totally understand that. Well, I think the cool thing here is this whole SODPC principles work so well. And I want to make sure that people understand how to use this. Again, obviously, we are huge advocates of email. I mean, we've built an entire software platform, ClickFunnels, with Actionetics on the back end. Actionetics is our email delivery platform, and it ties in with a whole bunch of other things. But the key there is you have to be using email in your business. And it's really why I wanted to make sure that you were on our podcast, Daniel, is that there's obviously it's important as far as understanding funnel steps and things. But now that you've got a person, they've given you your email address, you got to be able to communicate with them. And I've had a lot of people asking, saying, we would love some additional help as far as how do we write our emails better? How do we get better conversions out of our emails? So I really, really appreciate your being on our podcast today. I think it's kind of cool that you actually kind of seeded what you and I talked about earlier as far as these free subject lines. If you don't mind, kind of talk a little more about that and tell them where they can get them.
Yeah, I mean, if you get your SODPC down, if you nail every one of those 5 steps of the persuasive email, you basically get 2 fundamental business advantages. You get to mail your list more than everybody else because your emails are inherently rewarding, not in the sense of necessarily giving away hard content, but they bring a smile to the person's face, or they reveal some kind of useful wisdom or insight or encouragement, or they're just entertaining. And number 2, your conversion rate on the landing page is going to go sky high because you're thoroughly pre-selling people before you ask them to click, and you're getting away with it repeatedly because you never fail to bring value, so that when people are in their inbox and they see your name, their eyes are going to move over to the right and look at the subject line, where most of the time they see that person's name and they think, oh, yeah, and they just delete it, right? Or they're deleting like 5, 6, 10, 12 emails at a time, and that's how people behave in their inbox. So I've got a free report. And it's not about subject lines. This particular report is about opening lines, the second part of the 5-step SODPC formula, and it just gives you ideas for how do you start an email. And you can pick it up at www.daniellevis.com/Russell, all lowercase. It's got to be all lowercase or it won't work, because most people, when they're sitting down to write an email, the opening is the hardest part. I mean, people are just terrified of that blinking cursor and how do I get started? Those first few incredibly important sentences, extremely difficult to write. And Dave, if you don't hook that reader, as you know, man, all of your hard work in writing that email is pretty much wasted. It's gone. But if you can get a really great opening, the rest of the email tends to get a lot easier, much easier going. And your chances of making good sales or good registrations or good whatever it is you're trying to do with that email are so much more likely to happen. So that's what this is all about. It's 147 opening line idea starters for email marketing on fire. You can grab the free report at www.daniellevis.com/Russell, all lowercase, and you can get a ton of inspiration for getting an email going and out the door fast.
I love that. Thank you so much for actually providing that for people who are listening. I know that it's always the hardest part is to get that started. Getting emails started, it's like giving a presentation or a talk or anything else. It's always that first couple of paragraphs. Once that gets going, your mind gets you're in motion. It's that inertia of getting over that that's always the hardest part. So I really do appreciate that. Again, I want to make sure everyone understands the real reason why I wanted to make sure we had you on this podcast, Daniel, is we get people asking all the time, how does Russell write such great emails? How does he do it? What's the secret? And he's been he studied email and he's studied this type of alchemy for a long, long time. And it's one of those things that there is an art to it. It takes some time, but the part I like that you mentioned best is the idea, the fact that you can email your list more often without getting burnout. Yeah. And I think that is such a huge, huge valuable asset. It's kind of interesting. We've on our ClickFunnels, as far as when a person first gets going with ClickFunnels now, we actually created a 21-day consumption email list. Or email series that goes out. So they get an email almost every single day for 21 days, but all of it is having them take little bits of action. So they're consuming ClickFunnels on a more regular basis.
Right.
But it's interesting that, again, when we had all these written, the whole idea was we had to make sure that they were written in this type of a format where the opening was there, the deepening was there. And again, I encourage you guys, if you haven't seen that, go ahead and subscribe to that, and you can take a look at that as well. But Daniel, thank you so much. I love the fact that 147 openings. That's crazy. If you can't get started now, you can't ever do it with those 147. So thank you so very much for providing that. I really do appreciate it, Daniel.
Well, my pleasure, Dave. Great having a few minutes to talk to you today.
Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up here?
No, I just want to say that, email is such a gift, such a blessing, and the overwhelming temptation. And I know it's, there's only so much time, there's only so much bandwidth that people have. What ends up happening is email is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of marketing. It's kind of like an afterthought. People put hundreds of hours into their videos and their VSLs, and they're writing blog posts and doing this and everything else. But it's really, the best place to place your effort, because it's such a wonderful medium. There's nothing as personal as email. There's nothing that allows you to communicate more quickly, more cost effectively, more intimately. It's just, email is a miracle. And you really need to think more about how to execute on it. And when I first decided to focus on email marketing as a niche, as an educator, to really focus in on it, sure, there are people like Russell who kind of seem to have either the ability to work incredibly hard on it or some sort of natural talent for it. Like I read his book, and in the end, somewhere in the book, he talks about writing an email about going to the gym to get ready to compete as a wrestler. And when I read the email, it was kind of like it was SODPC, really. But it's really, difficult for people. And I first started, training people and teaching them how to do it. But like anything else, it's a 10,000 hour proposition to really become proficient, not just proficient, but fast and proficient, and so that you can really do this. So what I ended up doing was creating a whole library of templates that you can get a hold of that make the whole process a lot easier. I won't tell you about them today, but if you sign up at daniellevis.com/Russell there, eventually you'll hear about them.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Daniel. I love having you on the podcast. Appreciate all of your content, and I look forward to working with you again real soon, bud.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for listening to Funnel Hacker Radio Podcast. If you'd like to be notified anytime we release a new episode, just subscribe over at funnelhackerradio.com. In addition to that, we'd love to send you a free gift. You can find that free gift at funnelhackerradio.com/free trial. One last thing is we love giving away cars. So if you'd like access to a free dream car, all you have to do is go to funnelhackerradio.com/dream car and you'll get all the details. Thanks again for listening.